Hey, Neil McDonnell here. In this video, I want to sit there and help you understand how I go through certain documents that come out of the government. In this scenario, NASA had an industry back in August 2019, and I'm trying to pursue an opportunity for one of my customers that's being awarded in January 2020, maybe February 2020. But in this industry day that they put out, there was a lot of information that's in this slide deck, and I want to show you how I go through my process of analyzing these documents and the information they share. There's a lot of gold nuggets that are in them, in the documents or in this deck, and I want you to see how I go through it. This is a completely raw video. If you're used to seeing some of the stuff I do, sometimes it's scripted and it seems raw, and other times it's actually raw. This one's completely raw. And the reason I do this is because I want you to understand the process I go through. I say government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. Well, analyzing a document is just a process. I look at it like a maze. I'm going down this document and I'm looking for things that matter to me and to my customers. And those things I'll write or take a note on it and move forward. So I got my sheet of paper in front of me. And this first pass you're going to see me do, and let me share my screen while I'm describing it. So this first pass you see, and here's the deck. So there's, I think, it doesn't say it here. I think there's like 110 slides out of this meeting. So this meeting you can see was August 2019. But I got a piece of paper right here. You'll see me continue to look over here as I do this. And basically what I'm going to do first is just write down any slide that I care about that I want to come back and reference. I took a PDF. I'm in Adobe Acrobat, just so you know. And this is a PDF I found online. I actually found it in FedBizOps, whatever it is now, right? But inside of there, on a particular opportunity, they had just attached this file. And so it's great. I can go in and dig in, see what I missed from the industry day, but also pull out stuff that I can follow up as other action items. I might go back and forth, though, because I'm looking right now and I have no way to see what page number I'm on, and that will not be helpful to me. So let me just see. I might try to count or something, or I might just go through it with you and just come back a second time for myself. But I have not gone through this document in any kind of thorough way. I did flip through it really quick and I realized it was full of a lot of good stuff, so I'm going to come back to it. Let's start going through this again, completely raw. And I just am going to share with you what I'm thinking as I'm going through this. Hopefully it's helpful to you as well. Okay, so this is an opportunity that's out of the Marshall Space Flight Center. You can see here it's for strategic research and analysis communication. Just setting the scenario again, the customer I'm helping does video production. In their research, trying to find out where video production or how video production services are procured, they discovered that almost all of it for Marshall is through this one contract that has been around since 2012. And now in 2019, it was put out for bid again. In 2020, it's being awarded again for the next 5 years. This is like a $45 million contract. So it's a really good contract. And if my customer can get on the team for their video production services, they can add a significant amount of revenue to their company just on this opportunity. So I'm looking here. This is good. I can see some of the details. I have it in other areas, so I'm just going to go forward. Okay, so I'm just getting used to how I'm flipping through the slides here. The first thing I see on this one, it's got the agenda, but most importantly, it's got a bunch of people's names. So I'm going to be tracking who these people are. But James Casper is talking a lot, right? At this industry day, he apparently was sharing a lot. And clearly he's a facilitator, but I want to see what role he has. But then there's these other people, and I want to know, who are they? Should I follow back up, or should my customer follow back up as part of getting into the contract? Maybe these people might be able to provide some insight into the prime once it's awarded. They can't talk about it right now. These people can't talk about it right now, but maybe they could talk about that. But the other thing is maybe my customer can learn more about this contract, this customer at Marshall Space Flight Center, which will help them seem stronger to the prime when they go to talk to them. All right, let's come on down. So it's describing James as one of the procurement members, and here's an overview, an org chart of the source selection board or source evaluation board. If you haven't seen how a large contract, or any contract really, there's a handful of people who are deciding whether to award it to company A or company B or whoever. So these are the people, and you can begin to look at this and see who the players are. So over here, for example, David Brock on this right-hand side, he's representing the small business office for Marshall. I know that he's the director out there for that. And then there's all these other people who are filling in whatever roles they're filling in. Some of these are less, tracking on me, but for my customer, I would write down Kathy Rice because they're in IT, so that's important. Here's the director of procurement, so that's a good one for me to know. I'm interested in Marshall Space Flight Center for my customer, so these are some of the key people. Here I can see James Casper. I'm assuming that's the contracting officer. I could have looked somewhere else and found it out. So these key people here right in the middle, these voting members, these are really important people to know, not just now, but later on. You want to know which people are voting members, which people are advisors. And I just want to take a sidebar for a second. These people who are advisors and consultants, these are the people who influence the opportunity. And what large firms do and more mature small businesses do is they look out multi-year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years on opportunities. And so this particular opportunity is being awarded now. If you want to prime it in 5 years when it comes out again, well, these are good people to be paying attention to because they or others in their role might be impacting it. So this is kind of capture when you go in. I don't want to make it seem like I'm some sort of expert on capture. Go talk to a capture manager, but this is the basics. That these people are the important ones to be tracking on. So let's go ahead and go down. And then pricing is an interesting one. For this scenario, my customer doesn't really care about pricing. What they're caring about is the work, that the scope's going on, and then who's in there. So let's keep going through this. So here are the purpose of the event. I'm going to skip this. Sometimes I'll go through fast. You can always pause this video. You can go watch it again if you want, but I'm going to keep on going. Okay, so here I'm just paying attention to it. They're talking about the comment period. So here immediately I get James Casper's, so there he is. He is the contracting officer, and here's his email address. It's perfect. I got the beginning things. I might reach out or recommend my customer reach out to this contracting officer either now and ask, if it has been awarded or when will it be awarded, and or immediately after it's awarded, could the contracting officer put you in touch with the program manager of the prime that wins it? This is only going to one small business, and that means there'll be a program manager out there. So you want to, any way that you can, you want to try to reach that program manager. I talked in a different video about how to find all those potential prime contractors, but here James Casper is going to know who it is because he is signing the contract with the contractor who's winning. This is the prime contractor, and he will be scheduling some sort of kickoff meeting, which will happen within the first 2 weeks generally of a contract. So if James Casper is willing to share it with you or make an introduction, you can pop in there and try to do that. It's just one of many paths to trying to get in the door. Okay, so here I'm going to skip this because this whole slide, they're just talking about Marshall Space Flight Center. I don't really care about it for this particular exercise. You would care about it. Here they're talking about their overall organization. Now, this is a really good one. I've talked in a different video, and I just want to point it out again. In here, what they're saying with that red box is that the Office of Strategic Analysis and Communication is the one that's procuring these services. The reason this is important to my customer who does video production in this scenario is that they can go to other flight centers, space flight centers, et cetera. They can go to the other centers and find out, is there a similar office? And if there is, knock on those doors and try to find out who's got the existing contract. Is it procured the same way at Langley or Kennedy as it is in Marshall? And if it is, now my customer knows how to go in there. So anyways, this is an important piece of information, this one slide. Okay, so coming in here, this is even better, right? It's laying out in that office, what do they look like? So from my customer standpoint, I would be telling them, look, we want to find out who the director is, who the Office of Strategy Leadership is, and then Office of Communication would be another good one, right? Those three are the ones I would suggest because doing video production, my customer would want to try to reach out to these people. What kind of need do you have on video, et cetera? And it just needs to be a couple of quick phone calls for you to begin to learn this, right? It might take you a couple of weeks to get the answers, but the actual time commitment doesn't take that long to, pick up the phone and call them. Okay, so that's the office that's procuring this. Here it's talking about the previous contract. And it's saying who had it before, ASI, And it was a total small, I think. So they're acquired. They're no longer a small. Coming down here, it's just saying how it was bought. It was fixed price along with an IDIQ task orders, which is awesome. So, if you were farther along and you had more resources, you might really try to pursue what the task orders are, but that's separate from this video. And then last thing is, I'm just reading the supporting task orders have concluded, have been replaced temporarily by a sole source bridge contract, which is always kind of nice. But so, okay, so let's keep going. I tipped the screen up so it helps me see it. All right, so they're talking about the acquisition. So just how are they going forward? So here's Beverly Johnson. It says she's a voting member, but it doesn't tell me like what her role is. You might be able to figure it out from other ways, and I would personally. But okay, so the acquisition requirement, it talks about what they're trying to do. This is really important, right? When my customer goes and talks with a prime who wins this, they need to be able to communicate that they understand why was this acquired. So here it's in the sense of continuing need for comprehensive blah, blah, blah services, right? These services are key to implementing it. Okay, so here, again, I talk about these things. These are the high-level reasons for acquiring this service, or the main requirements for this contract. Overall communication of the strategy. So let's just keep coming down. So here now it's just getting in, and we already know about this. This is why we're in it, but we'll just look to see if there's anything that pops. Conducting strategic research is not them. Developing communication strategies and key messages. My customer might be able to help a little bit with that, especially since they do video production. They can help think about how to communicate that message out. Supporting the overall plan is a little less case. So here's media relations. My customer in video production, they're at the high end of video production. So they have a lot of media relation experience that they can touch on. And then, and that's about it. I mean, generating content for sure. And then looking at the last thing, the last one is designing exhibits. It depends on what they mean by exhibits, but mostly if you're going in talking about your core competency, and that's what my customer would be doing, then that's fine. Okay, so here's just the acquisition approach. It's the same. It's just telling us it's going to be task orders. The reason task orders is very attractive to my customer is that they can come in and say, hey, when you get a task order that's out there for video or something, we can help you with that. And so there might not be any video work right now, but maybe 2-3 months or 2-3 quarters from now, there would be. So they're setting it aside for smalls. We already knew that from a previous video I did. Just as an aside, by the way, this is the NAICS code this is being procured on. This NAICS code is not being used by my customers, so they want to add this NAICS code to their roster for SAM. They don't need to put it on their capability statement, but put it in SAM, put it on their watch list in FBO or whatever it's called now. Okay, so it's just a size standard. So the acquisition approach is just going on. FAR, contractor, NASA regulations, skills, whatever. So I would encourage my customer to be looking at the pricing. They want to match their pricing. Okay, so here they're talking about the requirements. And so my customer has already done this. They've looked in this company for it. Spaces, PWS, mission. So this is all, none of it matters to what I'm trying to find out. I'm just trying to look in and go, is any of this useful for me digging into the customers? Okay, so now here the PWS is an overview. I'm looking through really quick to see if there's anything that really matters. And for video production, I think it's 5.0 is where the real meat would be if there's anything. So let's kind of go through this fairly fast. So looking through this, supplies and services. Okay, so this is just all their base period stuff. I'm going to skip through this. It goes out to 2025, which is awesome. Okay, so maximum, okay. I don't know if I'm missing it here, but it looks like maximum potential for the contract, including options, is 26 million. I don't know if I'm reading that right, but really it doesn't matter because the whole point is just to get in and see if you can be part of it. Okay, so installation, that's just blah, blah, blah. Mandatory requirements, I don't care about that at the moment. Okay, so here's Christopher James. Let's see what he's got. Detailed overview. I like how these guys are calling it Fed Biz Ops too. I guess it's because it went beginning of the year. Okay, so general work order mission. Communicate. So again, 4.0 is really where video production would play. Or 5.0, excuse me. Looking at that, coming down. So it's showing me, it's breaking it down. You could have done all this yourself if you had looked at the original PWS. I'm looking at it from a different document, but let's keep going. Contract management, I don't care at all. Strategic research, communication planning. Actually, what I would look for, so let me back up for 1 second, excuse me. Clear understanding of the target they need to have. So this one here, this is something I would tell my customer right here, is that plans products shall align with Marshall Integrated Strategic Communication Plan. So what I'm going to do is go find that strategic integrated, Marshall Strategic Integrated Plan, and and track from there. Actually, let me just see, together with you, we'll pop over here really quick. Let's just see if it's this easy. Let me just put NASA really quick. If I don't see it, I'm going to switch. I don't see it right off the start, and so I'm going to skip. Just looking. You're seeing what I'm doing, right? You're seeing me pause and having to figure it out and look for it. So I've already got NASA's strategic plan before, but here's a communication strategy, and it's 2015. So instantly, I'm going to try to say, just show me the past year. NASA, a lot of good stuff out here when you start looking. But I don't see, and let me do one last thing. I'm just going to put it in quotes and see if I can find it. So there's no results for that. All right, so I'm going to pause on that and just come back to the document. But that's an example of a document now that I would recommend my customer reach back out to the Marshall small business people or whatever and say, can you get me a copy of this? This should not be, this should be a public plan that you can get. So let's look at communication products and services. Planning and development, media relations. So media relations, they could fit in, certainly social media to some degree. And that's it on that. Planning and developing, speaker bureau stuff. That could be really helpful on videotaping speakers, maybe doing little video bios of them, et cetera. Scientific. And again, just jumping through. You're kind of reading this with me, right? As I remind you that we're into the raw. So here, exhibit support. I'm just looking to see if any of this stuff is around video production. And I don't really see it. I think this is a different type of artifact for the customer. And then this is just their IDIQ stuff. Okay. Again, this page doesn't mean anything. I'm only going to stop when I see something that tracks, right? So here's the work order management system on how they're doing it. I'm just seeing if there's anything that fits in. Nah, it's just how they're reporting. Same thing there. So let's get into this document. So this is just a type of data types, whatever that means. I'm not going too far into it. But, okay, so this one. Data requirements. This is just descriptions. So this is just, it looks like just some of the deliverables. I don't want to go too far into it. I could go farther into it and know for sure. But again, okay, so on-site employee location. So this is just, this is funny. They want to track where you're at. So that's fine. This is just something they do. This is just, by the way, these are all just compliance things you need to do. Re-procurement data packages, blah, blah, blah. These are just, so PRMS or PRSs. Just looking. Now this is all basic stuff. So biannual on-site mishaps. So now we're into whatever these are. Performance requirements. These are just the work requirements that are in there. This is just the quality of the work. If you're not familiar with reading through these, they're just describing how you're going to be held accountable. again, I'm looking for things that I can grab to be able to provide. So here's labor categories. What I told my customers is you need to be reaching out into the different contract vehicles out there that might have video production type labor categories, and make sure your pricing is fitting into that average that's sitting out there. You can go into some of the GSA tools, like I think it's Calc, and find that data, but it's limited compared to what you can do on your own research when you're looking at many different competitors' rates that are out there. So wage determination, blah, blah, blah. None of that matters here because we're just trying to get the work, right? So here's a contractor's plan of attack. Okay, here you go, draft. So final due 15 calendar days after the phase in. So there's a phase in place, but the reason I'm saying this is this all happens right away. And video production for my customer is a good one because it might not be a big part of this overall large contract, but it could be, and because it's not an overall large piece of this contract, it could be one that was easily just touched on during the response phase, but they really didn't have, a named teaming partner that's going to cover that work or something. And so if you show up, that could be, can just be lucky. I mean, the answer is always yes or no, right? Okay, so here they're just talking about some of the other staffing plan. Just looking to see if there's anything that's mandatory to our guys. No. So eligibility requirements. These are just basic stuff. Okay. I thought this was, I'm pretty sure this is only being awarded to one company, but I'm curious. Okay, so this is just conflict of interest plans you have to put in place occasionally. On-site plan, blah, 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 property management plan. I'm not really tracking on those. So this installation of services, this is just all the stuff that they're giving you and you have to bring in. Government property rates. Okay, so here you go. The contractor shall not exceed hourly labor rates when pricing task orders. What this means to my customer, why this first bullet is important to my customers, as soon as this contract comes out, somehow they have to figure out how to get their hands on the labor rates. So they have to figure out the prime, build a relationship, get those labor rates, and then they know never to sit there and come to the prime with rates that are higher than these guys because they're just not going to accept it, right? So it's important to find out what those rates were that were out there. The other thing is, because they know this, they should go back to the original RFP that dropped, and in there's a whole pricing spreadsheet that lays out labor categories, and they should look to see which labor categories in that pricing spreadsheet or labor category spreadsheet, which labor categories fit what video production would use. That way they're able to chase down the exact same description. Okay, so this is all blah, blah, blah. Task order summaries, how it comes out. And so that's just all basic task order, but it doesn't matter to try and, again, the purpose of this video is me reading this industry trade document to see what I can find that'll help my customer get in the door of the prime who wins this contract. If my customer can pick up $500,000 or $1 million in revenue annually from this prime by being their video production expert, then that's a good day, right? And analyzing a document like this helps us figure that out. So now we're just into abbreviations of blah, blah, blah. Here's some of the key elements. Blah, instructions of the officer, proposal page. So, wow, this is a massive response that they put in, right? They're 200 pages at least they probably put in, not to mention a lot of this other activity. So this was a very serious contract for Marshall and what they were looking for. So now here's designated point of context. I'm just looking to see if there's anything in particular. Okay, one of the things about designated point of context, I mentioned it in a different video, and I'll just say it here a little bit, is you can go in and find a lot of potential designated points of contact who were part of the capture activity, whether it's in the industry day list of people who registered or whether it's in the request for information responses who responded to the RFIs. You'll see points of contact there. They could add in there. This is just organizational stuff, due dates of the proposal. Let me just look here. Acquisition approach. This is all stuff that they talked about. Okay, so here, this one I'm just reading because, okay, well, thanks. So they answered my question, solidly answered it. We're doing one award to one small business. And then here they're looking at, so here they're just describing a subcontractor, which is fine. Okay, so here they're just talking more about it. Let's keep going. Acquisition approach. We've already looked at a lot of this, so I'm not paying attention. Actually, one second. Okay. And then purpose solicitation, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, let's look at this. And the reason I'm just looking is there anything unique that they're putting in on how they responded? Pricing. So here, this is what I was talking about, right? They have an Excel pricing model. So go in there and take a look at that. That was in the original response or RFP on FBO. Sorry if I'm going too fast with acronyms if you're new to the game. Okay, so let's keep going down. So here's an example of some of the stuff that they have in here. It's just pricing, hours in the contract that they're putting in. Okay, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier, is you want to go through there and look at these NASA identified labor categories, and hopefully most of them came from the previous work. But one of the areas I could play in really well is the social media area, because I'm an expert on social media. The video production folks, I'm looking in here and trying to figure out where would they fit, right? And they might fit into communication a little bit, editor for sure, and then media specialist maybe. There is some stuff here. It's not really a graphic designer because it's a lot more work. Let me just see if there's something on the next one. Here they're just coming down. Writer, media, they're just kind of repeating it, this exhibit. So none of that stuff really fit in. So those are the labor categories. And that was what the video production company that I'm working with, they have to come in here and look and go, which ones really would be us? So then they know how to play, because that's how this prime responded, and that's how these guys need to respond to them. Okay, so here they're just laying out the different hours. I don't really care about that at the moment. Past performance. So this one's really interesting because this is how the prime's being evaluated on their past performance. So maybe my sub, when they're thinking about reaching out, they should be able to talk to a degree at this level, right? It says 5 reference contracts. So my sub should have, my customer should have that same kind of stuff, the reference contracts, minimum performance of a year. That's a big deal for larger primes. It should be less so for smalls that are trying to get in the door. 5-year period. So this is just outside. Anyways, okay, so that stuff is pretty self-evident. Here's a questionnaire that went out. They're just asking who's the folks. I'm going to skip that. Contract instructions is all pretty basic. Here they're just saying what they added in. So in the RFP. Basis for the award, I don't really care about in this video. Just cruising forward really fast now. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So it's talking about firm fixed price, period of performance is, okay, so this is perfect, right, for my customer. This contract is starting August of 2020, and it's getting awarded in early 2020. So there's time for them to get in the door and build that relationship and figure out, how to do something. And so for them, I would tell them, don't get in there and scare the prime away by coming in too hard and too fast. Instead, come in and really slowly get to understand the prime. What other contracts do they have? Begin to follow them maybe a little bit on social media. There's no massive rush. It's not like, there's this huge competition. I know there's a lot of potential competition, but many people just won't do the work. And so if you take the time to get to know who is the program manager, the main point of contact, et cetera, you figure it out. Okay, so let's look at this. So here they're just talking about phase in, or the handoff type activity. ensure anticipated contractor workforce is compliant. One thing I already told my customer, and I'll tell you guys, is that you want to find out who the previous program manager was for the incumbent and see if you can't reach out to them. If they're not going after this or they didn't win it, they might be a little more willing to just chat with you and say, oh yeah, video production, we did, this much type work or something. They might not share really sensitive information, but there's some basic stuff that all of us just have conversations about. Okay, so we're down to the end of this, obviously. Oh, there, finally I see a page number on the bottom. I might have been missing it the whole time, but we got about 10 more pages. So here I'm coming in. There's a video to follow, and I already watched that video, and it basically is just telling you all about Marshall. You don't really need to pay attention to it, and my customer certainly doesn't. Oh, it looks like that was the last page then. Okay, so let me just go back and maybe hit escape and see what happens here. So you see that's 102 pages on this thing. And it's, and I, just so I show you what I showed the other day, these are the people who registered for this virtual industry. So when you go to FBO, you can find these two documents. That's where I got them, is off of FBO. And this is as of January 2020, right? This is all modern or current tips I'm providing you. You go in there and you can find the points of contact, their email address, et cetera. And in here, it had a lot of the information that could be helpful to you. So let me pause for a second, just kind of recap the video and what I was talking about, because it's really important you understand the direction we go. Any of us who are doing analysis on these type of documents is we just look and we try to find a gem and we move forward. I know I went through 102 pages on this thing, but as a reminder, right, when I came in, I got these people's names, and then down here, all these people's names are so helpful for me to understand a little bit more about who's in there, who's part of the people who make decisions on large contracts of this type in NASA for Marshall Space Flight Center. These people begin, especially if you're a small business and you're new to this world, these are the people you begin to want to know. They're the influencers in Marshall. And the more you know about them and the more you track what they do on social media or what they put out, or even just reaching out to them and trying to get an introduction, the more you learn about what Marshall does and what's important to them. And then you can also sit there and perhaps learn more about these particular opportunities. Because this opportunity isn't starting till August, the period of performance is 5 years from that point. You've got time to develop some of the relationships and see if they'll introduce you to some of the folks. If you reach out, I'm going to scroll a little faster here. If you reach out to the Director of Office Strategic Communication, well, who's doing videos? Can I talk to the people who were doing videos on the previous contract, whatever? All they can say is yes or no, right? And so any question that you have in your mind is very legitimate. It's totally okay to ask any question. It's their job to say no, right? And the question, it doesn't matter what question you ask, right? At worst, somebody's going to sit there and say it's not appropriate for us to answer. But it's totally okay for you to sit there and say, hey, how much did you spend on that type of work or something? They're either going to answer or they're not. It's not my fault I'm asking a question. There are some questions that will really help you guide yourself closer to the revenue, whether it's a prime contract you're trying to win, or in this particular case, trying to be a subcontractor. So I hope this video was helpful to you as I walked through just a 100-slide deck, trying to find nuggets that will help a video production company get on a contract like this. That's a $20 to $40 million contract that can buys what they sell. This is where they procure it for NASA at Marshall Space Flight Center. So hope you found it helpful. If you did, make sure you let others know about it. I do this work for my customers that pay me. And I recognize that so many people out there can't afford people like me, consultants like me, to give you guidance or help you do the work. And by giving you this raw video, maybe it'll coach you in a way that you would get as if you were paying me, but you can just do it on your own time, do it on the weekend or whatever. Anyways, remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. Doing a deep dive on documents like this is part of the process. Happy hunting.